That person you can't stop thinking about. The one draining your energy, blocking your breakthrough, making you question your worth. God's about to remove them, and it's going to happen so fast, so suddenly, you won't have time to stop it. Actually, it's already begun. Stop. This removal isn't punishment, it's promotion. And the 3 warning signs I'm about to show you will confirm exactly who God is removing and why your breakthrough depends on their absence. Here's what religion won't tell you. Not everyone in your life is supposed to stay in your life. Jesus himself had a Judas. David had a Saul. Joseph had brothers who sold him into slavery. Sometimes God's greatest gift isn't who he adds, it's who he subtracts. Maria from Brazil messaged our channel last month. For 2 years, she'd been in a friendship that started beautifully but slowly became her personal prison. Every conversation left her exhausted. Every interaction required careful navigation to avoid conflict. She prayed for the relationship to improve, but instead, God showed her something shocking. I'm not going to fix this relationship. I'm going to end it. Because what's waiting for you can't arrive until they leave. 3 weeks later, without any confrontation, without drama, that person simply disappeared from her life, got a job offer in another city, moved within days. Maria said, "It was like God literally relocated them." The book of Proverbs warns us, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." Proverbs 13:20. But here's what's wild. Sometimes the fool isn't obviously foolish. Sometimes they're charming. Sometimes they're family. Sometimes they're the person you thought you'd marry. The first warning sign God's about to remove someone. Every time you level up spiritually, they level up their resistance. You start praying more. They mock your religious phase. You set boundaries. They call you selfish. You pursue your calling. They list all the reasons you'll fail. You experience breakthrough. They remind you of your past. You share good news. They find the potential problem. This isn't occasional disagreement. This is systematic opposition to your growth. Daniel from Texas discovered this pattern with his business partner of 5 years. Every time I wanted to operate with more integrity, more faith-based decisions, he'd say I was being naive. When I started tithing from the business, he said I was stealing from our profits. When I refused to lie to clients, he said I didn't understand business. One morning, Daniel arrived at work to find his partner had sold his shares overnight to a competitor and disappeared. No warning, no discussion, just gone. The business should have collapsed. Instead, it tripled in 6 months. Daniel told me, God removed the weight I didn't know I was carrying. Here's the biblical truth. When King Saul realized David was anointed, he didn't celebrate. He tried to kill him. Sometimes people oppose your growth not because they hate you, but because your light exposes their darkness. 1 Corinthians 15:33 doesn't suggest, it commands, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. This isn't optional advice, it's spiritual law. You cannot maintain your calling while carrying someone who's committed to killing it. Watch for this pattern. If every spiritual victory you have triggers their criticism, every boundary you set sparks their rebellion, every blessing you receive causes their resentment, God's removal process has already begun. They're not just unsupportive, they're spiritually allergic to your destiny. The second warning sign is subtle but powerful. You feel more like yourself when they're not around. Pay attention to your body's wisdom. When they text, your stomach drops. When they call, you need a moment before answering. When plans get canceled, you feel relief instead of disappointment. When they're on vacation, you can finally breathe. Your body knows what your loyalty won't admit. Their presence is toxic to your peace. Jennifer from California noticed this pattern with her sister. I'd visit my sister for a weekend and need a week to recover. Not from activity, from her energy. Every conversation centered on her drama, her problems, her criticism of everyone. I'd leave feeling empty, anxious, and somehow guilty for being happy. Then came COVID. They couldn't visit for 8 months. Jennifer told me, Those 8 months revealed who I was without her constant negativity. I started a business, lost 30 pounds, strengthened my marriage. The moment she returned, I started shrinking again. That's when Jennifer heard God clearly. I gave you 8 months to see who you are without that weight. Now choose her presence or your purpose. Psalm 23 says, "He restores my soul." But how can God restore what someone else constantly depletes? Sometimes removal is restoration. The third warning sign is unmistakable. Circumstances keep pulling you apart without your intervention. They get a job across the country. Your schedules suddenly never align. Every plan falls through. Technology fails only with them. Calls drop, messages don't send, emails disappear. This isn't coincidence. This is divine engineering. Look at Abraham and Lot. They didn't have a falling out. Genesis 13 says the land simply couldn't support both their flocks. God used logistics to separate them. Abraham became the father of nations. Lot ended up in a cave. Sometimes God separates you not from bad people, but from people headed to different destinations. Michael from Florida experienced this with his childhood friend. We were inseparable for 20 years. Then suddenly everything kept us apart. He'd visit, and I'd get called into work. I'd plan to see him. My car would break down. We'd set phone calls, and emergencies would arise. 6 months later, Michael discovered his friend had gotten involved in illegal activities. If we'd stayed close, I would have been implicated. God created distance to protect my future. Here's what nobody teaches. When God is removing someone, He makes it increasingly difficult to maintain connection. What used to be easy becomes complicated. What flowed naturally now requires force. Acts 16:6-7 shows Paul trying to go to Asia, but the Spirit prevented him. Trying to enter Bithynia, but the Spirit wouldn't allow it. Sometimes God's removal looks like repeated closed doors, failed attempts, and frustrated connections. If you're exhausting yourself trying to maintain a relationship that keeps falling apart, stop fighting God's intervention. He's not asking for your permission. He's executing your protection. The pattern is clear. Opposition to your growth. Absence brings peace. Distance keeps increasing. These aren't random occurrences. This is divine severance. But here's what most people miss. The space they occupied wasn't empty. It was reserved. Reserved for the right mentor, the right partner, the right friend. Someone who celebrates your calling instead of criticizing it. Someone who multiplies your peace instead of stealing it. Someone whose presence propels you forward instead of pulling you backward. Now here's what you need to understand. God's removal process has likely already begun. You're not watching this by accident. That person you thought about when you clicked this video, that's not coincidence. That's confirmation. But here's where most people mess up. They try to help God remove people. They create confrontation. They announce the separation. They burn bridges dramatically. Don't. When God removes someone, it's surgical, not sloppy. Your job isn't to push them out. Your job is to stop pulling them back in. Stop resurrecting dead relationships. Stop forcing connections God is severing. Stop feeling guilty for their absence. Stop apologizing for your growth. Stop dimming your light to make them comfortable. Here's the prayer that changes everything. God, if this person is blocking my purpose, remove them with your wisdom, not my emotion. I surrender my grip. I release control. I choose my calling over comfort. Lisa from New York prayed this exact prayer about her toxic mother. I couldn't cut off my mom, but I couldn't keep letting her destroy my mental health. Within 2 months, her mom announced she was moving to Europe to find herself. No fight, no confrontation, just divine relocation. But here's the warning. When God removes someone, don't chase them. The Israelites kept wanting to go back to Egypt, to slavery, because it was familiar. Don't let familiarity override your freedom. Some of you are holding on to someone God is trying to remove because you're afraid of being alone. But God can't fill a space that's already occupied. He can't send the right person while you're gripping the wrong one. The removal might hurt initially. You might feel guilty. They might call you selfish, unforgiving, or unchristian. But Jesus himself said in Matthew 10:34-36 that he came not to bring peace, but a sword, sometimes dividing even families. Here's what happens after divine removal. Your energy returns, your vision clarifies, your prayers intensify, your breakthrough accelerates. Opportunities you couldn't see suddenly appear. People you needed to meet suddenly arrive. Remember 3 truths. Removal is not rejection, it's redirection. God's subtraction is actually addition. Empty hands can receive new blessings. In our last video about praying wrong, I showed you why some prayers don't work. Sometimes they don't work because the wrong person is affecting your spiritual frequency. If you haven't watched that yet, click that video on your screen now, because removing the wrong people amplifies the right prayers. Some of you are 30 days away from a completely different life. The only variable is whether you will let God complete this removal or keep defending someone who's destroying your destiny. Here's the truth that changes everything. If God is removing them, don't chase them. Your destiny is waiting on the other side of their absence. Write that down. Screenshot it. Remember it when the loneliness hits. Remember it when they try to return. Remember it when you're tempted to reach out. That person you're thinking about right now, the one causing that knot in your stomach, God's already moving them. Your breakthrough isn't coming. It's already here, hidden behind their shadow. Stop holding on to what God is taking away. Your next level is waiting. With faith and divine alignment, Gabriel Elias, Pax Animae.